Welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable. I'm Sarah Vantine here with Luke May of White Family of Dealerships. Luke, welcome to the Fixed Ops Roundtable.
Thank you, and glad to be here.
Well, we're so excited to have you today. But first, before we get into our questions, we'd love to have you introduce yourself to our audience and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Okay, well, I think I probably got into automotive when I was 5 years old. My mom says I cut my chin on a Tonka toy and got it all in my blood, so it's the only thing I've ever done. But I've been a Ford mechanic. I worked for General Motors in the field for 20 years, and now I run 5 dealerships in South Dakota and Wyoming.
Well, talk to us a little bit because how you got started is really fascinating. Technicians are so important in the conversation of what we're having in the industry. But how did you first get started becoming a technician?
I think it was something that had an interest in high school, and I thought about what am I really genuinely interested in. And I went through a program with Ford called the Ford Asset Program. Then I realized I wasn't that great as a technician, so I went back to school.
That's incredible. And how did you see the transition happening between where you were starting as a technician and now being responsible for 5 dealerships?
I can't tell you how much I appreciate that I was a technician. It helps me understand the dealership operations, helps me understand really core processes that I don't think a lot of people who run dealerships understand what a technician goes through. So that experience was one of the most valuable things I've ever done.
Well, Luke, and talk to us a little bit more about that because you're so right. In the industry today, we're having a lot of conversations around technician retention, around how the technology in these vehicles is changing so rapidly, but it's becoming more important than ever for the technician to really be visible in this process. So, how have you seen technicians in your company evolve?
It's a great question. I think, when I think about evolving technicians, there's this whole generally untapped market of women who are really, really good technicians, but it's not always a career path that women are used to following. And we actually have over half of our leadership staff in our fixed operations are women. And,
Wow.
so I think that's a big opportunity. And it's fun for me because my daughter was also a technician. And so that it was fun to see. Um, and then I do things like take our shop floor people to the SEMA show, and we do some fun team building things that I really think help retention.
Well, and also, I mean, it's so important what you just touched on, really educating and continuing the conversation with how do you bring people into the industry that may have not originally been thinking about a future as a technician or a future in automotive. So, what pieces have you seen become more important for a technician's education today?
I think, the vehicles of today, everyone knows, are just, extremely complicated. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of diagnostic skills. And what we find is that recruiting from our current technicians who recommend us because we're a strong place to work where we do take care of our technicians in every way. Also from trade schools. And sometimes it's just we put out an ad on Indeed, and we use all methods to attract technicians, and you really have to use all because it is so difficult. But yeah.
It's incredible to hear this. And also, you have a lot of experience with Northwood University. Can you share a little bit more about that as well?
Well, I mentioned that I realized I wasn't a very good technician, and so I went back to school to Northwood University, and went for an automotive marketing degree. Went to Midland, Michigan, and then down to their campus in Texas, and that was a great education. And from there, I went out to work for General Motors in the field.
Such a cool story, Luke. And I really appreciate the fact that all these pieces that you've brought together in your career have really built where you are today and the success that you've had. For those of our audience members that are listening to this, what advice would you share with them about the automotive industry and what pieces would you say are important to consider as they want to develop their career?
I think being open to any opportunities, getting your foot in the door is important. So if you think, okay, I really want to be a technician, but you're offered a parts position, try it. You never know. You might find a better fit. For me personally, I thought I wanted to be a technician. I found a much better fit in another role. And it took me going back to school, taking some other roles. But I would say be open to any opportunity where it gets your foot in the door if you're genuinely interested in the automotive industry.
Well, Luke, just to close things out in NADA and the Fixed Ops Roundtable, some of the conversations that we're having across the industry really center on, technician enhancements, technician development, retention, and, sourcing technicians from high school and, starting that conversation very early in their education and early in their processes. For 2026, what would you say are some of the most important things that retailers need to be focusing on?
That we as dealers need to be focused on.
Yes.
I would say there is so much competition for talent that we need to take care of our employees in every way. And I mentioned taking them to SEMA. I mean, unique things like that matter. Sometimes it's little things that matter. Having a business card for technicians so that they understand that they're part of that value proposition that we have, having them named on the website and recognized and in our social media posts, not just talking about sales, but talking about technicians and fixed operations in general, I think is an opportunity in the industry, and people want to feel important, and it lets people know that they genuinely are important to us.
Well, Luke, thank you so much for being on the Fixed Ops Roundtable with us today. I'm here with Luke May. We're here at the Fixed Ops Roundtable. Luke, thank you again for being here, and everyone stay tuned. We have more coming up next.
Thank you.